All right, I'm Julie Miles. I'm mom to Miller, who is 9 years old, and he was diagnosed in July of 2020. I'm also a licensed physical therapist assistant in South Carolina. And early in my career, I was in pediatrics, and I was actually in pediatrics when Miller got diagnosed and that whole journey. I've since switched to acute care, so I'm working in the hospital, working with our sickest patients in the hospital in the ICU, critical care unit. And so I do see mostly 18 and up right now, but I have experience in peds. So it's unique to I see both sides. So hearing these amazing parents talk about therapies, I'm just over here nodding my head the whole time because I get that and I get what they're saying. So I have a unique perspective, and I'm obviously a very big advocate for therapies. So Miller began therapy at 9 months old. So we're still doing therapies, but we knew early on that we were in it for the long haul. Um, but I personally know that navigating the complexities of Syngap can be incredibly overwhelming. But we want to support our children in the best ways that we can. So I want to look at this as a multidisciplinary approach. So PT, OT, and speech. Of course, PT is my domain, but I work very closely with all of the disciplines, and we co-treat. So, but I do want to say before I really dive in that every child with Syngap 1 is unique, and the therapy approaches really should be individualized. I can't stress that enough. And I hear what parents are saying, and I hear what you're saying on Facebook, and I read them, and I really take them to heart because this is something I'm so passionate about. Their goals. Are we discussing this as a team? And I'm going to touch on that in just a second, but it should be individualized because we all know our kids do not present like any other children. It's similar, but it's very different. So I'm going to talk about some goals and purposes of therapy, but I'm not going to talk about milestones because every one of you in here could write the book on milestones, especially if your kids are in those early, like 0 to 5 years. You know the goals. You're reading about them. You're watching your children. You know that they're delayed, and you're watching to see, how big that gap is becoming. So I'm not going to talk about that. But what I will specifically highlight, especially for you new diagnosed parents in here, is early infancy and those early adolescent years. Early intervention is key. Early intervention is key. It is so important. We used to say 0 to 3, but it's really become more 0 to 5 years old. Those years are really critical that we get kids into the clinic, and we are working on those gross motor, fine motor, communication skills. The earlier you can get them in there, the better, really. I mean, it is important. And I'm not going to talk about how often and stuff. I'll talk about that in a minute because it's tailored to every family and their needs. So goals of PT, OT, and speech. PT, we're going to be supporting the physical function and mobility so they can become more independent and active. Goals of OT, increase independence in their everyday activities. And you may hear this as ADLs, so activities of daily living, and improve overall function in areas like play, school, social interaction. Those are all very important. And then goals of speech to help your child improve communication, comprehension, social interaction. So early infancy is what I really want to highlight. In my professional opinion, this is one of the most, if not the absolute most important stages of development. I strongly feel like because we pushed Miller really hard, bless his heart. I worked with him a lot. He even came to work with me. But I pushed him so hard because it's a blessing and a curse. I knew the literature behind it. I was watching these children develop at the clinic, and I knew how important it was. Um, just giving all of his challenges and everything was sort of against him during that time. We pushed it hard. I mean, he was in therapies 2 days a week, all three disciplines. We were getting early intervention through the state. So those years they're important. Early brain development is crucial, and early intervention helps maximize neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to recognize itself by forming new neural connections. You may hear us use a lot of these terms in the clinical context, like integrating primitive infantile reflexes. So this is so our kids develop more natural movements of patterns and behaviors. If your therapist has not talked with you about regulating those and integrating those reflexes, that's very important. And it becomes more important when they enter their school years. Typical childhood activities such as playing with their peers, running, jumping, sitting in their desk and writing, self-care tasks, all those we see kids that even Miller, who don't have primitive reflexes integrated, we see that later on in life. Like some of Miller's aren't integrated. If he's, on hands and knees, there's a reflex. If he turns his head, his arm is going to bend. And I'm not worried about integrating that because it's Miller. You just choose your battles. But in those very early years, there were things that we were working on because I knew he wouldn't be able to meet some of these goals if those reflexes weren't integrated. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I could sit up here for hours and talk about that. But another thing is we want to help them stimulate their proprioceptive system. So that helps children become more aware of where their body is in space. Proprioception is important for all of us, even adults. I think of Catherine. She broke her ankle and had surgery. Her proprioception and her ankles, unfortunately, I don't think she's in here. It'll probably never be quite the same because she's had an injury. But that also goes back to childhood proprioception, their coordination, balance, body awareness, even emotional regulation. Early therapy can help address these issues and provide support before these become integrated, and there's not much that we can do once they reach a certain age. So to get out of all that, every state has an early intervention program. If you're not getting those services, that's from 0 to 3. Look into that. You can just Google it. In South Carolina, it's called BabyNet. In Louisiana, it was called Early Steps. So I was an Early Steps interventionist, and I would go into daycares or their home or the park or anywhere the family wanted to meet me. We would just play. And so that is a lot of fun at that age. The kids really don't know that they're working. It's just play. And excuse me, guys, but they're doing a lot of work and it's free. So maximize those services if you can, because after that, they go into generally the school system will pick them up, even if they're not in pre-K. The school system can pick them up at that point and provide services, but it changes. I was a contract therapist, and so I didn't really have very many rules, I guess you could say. So we just did whatever. I mean, we would go to the museum. I mean, just all kinds of places for fun. But it does change once they reach 3 and up. So we're going to be maximizing the services, but I put a little highlight here because I want y'all to just recognize that you're all doing enough and you're all doing an amazing job. Like I said, I see your post and we chit chat and a lot of you message me like, y'all are doing enough and you're doing a great job, and it needs to be tailored to your family. I was crazy and I did too much during those time, or during that time. And I always would say, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? We need to be doing more therapies. He needs to be in therapy 3 days a week. And it we were doing what we needed to do. But I just encourage you, if you're doing the therapies, it's just extra tools for your toolbox to help your child. And that's really what's most important. That's what we're here for. We want to help you. We're educating you as the parent to help your child. So what happens as our children grow, we're kind of in this stage with Miller, he's 9. So periodic reevaluations, we're doing those, but they will change. Um, and then the ongoing need. Our kids, therapy is really going to be an ongoing need for our kids. There are breaks that we can take, just like Joe said. I think it was Joe. We took breaks. We took, gosh, probably a 6-month break or so, and it was good. It was good for Miller, but honestly, it was good for us. Um, and nothing changed during that period. We could have done that when he was younger, and I don't think anything really would have changed. I think our children, I've looked at some of the data from CHOP, and who showed it? Joey Lynn shared something earlier. Our kids are on that curve, and then it does sort of flatten out. Like that would have happened with Miller, I think. Even though I pushed so hard, I think eventually we would have just sort of flattened and plateaued. And we've kind of gotten to that point now with him. So what are we doing now? We're still doing therapy, but we're doing different types of therapy. And I can't stress that enough too. There are a lot of things that our kids can do: swimming, horseback riding. Gosh, there is a lot. Miller swims once a week, and he loves that, and he is using every muscle in his body, and it's great. Just keeping our kids active, I think, is really important. All right, guys. So this is a fun topic, but it's one that we talk about a lot, and this is insurance and secondary coverage. So I asked a question on Facebook last week because I was genuinely curious of what your state looks like as far as a secondary insurance or waivers. And I was a little bit shocked at what you guys responded with. So I'll start with us. So we know insurance is one of the common concerns that we have. It's something that we've all thought about. We've probably cried about. I know I have cried buckets of tears when insurance said, sorry, we're not going to cover therapy anymore. That's going to be, thousands of dollars a month. No more visits. You're done. So we appealed it. No, we're finished. So you're going to have to pay out of pocket, and it's March. So that is heartbreaking. That was when we were in Louisiana and we didn't have any secondary options. Now they have the Katie Beckett waiver, or TEFRA. And we also have that in South Carolina because that's where we are now. So if you have not looked up to see what your state offers as far as waivers or a secondary non-income based Medicaid, or even, if you're on Medicaid, regular Medicaid, if you haven't looked into it or applied, you really need to do that because it can open up the door to so much more for our kids. TEFRA, which is what we have, it serves as our secondary, so it helps face co-pays, deductibles, anything that's not fully covered by our primary insurance. So some states, according to you guys, there's some wait list. Like someone said, Summer, 9 years. Riker was on a waiver for 9 years, and she was saying we're 10,000 plus every year out of pocket. So that's heartbreaking. Like I'm reading these things and I could just cry for you parents that are in these states that have those wait lists like that. So the sooner you can get on these wait lists or apply for these programs, the better. So if you're newly diagnosed and not sure about all that, look into that, or you can come talk with me. Or another thing I did say is reach out to your SRF state ambassadors. They can help you with that as well. That's why they're there. So let Corey know if you're not sure who it is. Who? Zoe? Who? Oh, the advocates. I said ambassadors. Advocates. Yes, reach out to them. Corey can help you with that. They're our go-to people for that state. I didn't have any idea if that's what was going on. Sorry, I'm probably over my time. Wrap it up. Oh, Okay, my last thing that I'm going to say is this is important. Denials, when that happens, most insurance companies will deny for 3 reasons. They believe it's no longer medically necessary, your child has plateaued in progress, or you've reached your maximum number of therapy visits per year. So January 1st is about to happen. If you don't have a secondary insurance, make sure you know what that number is, because we didn't know what it was, and that hit us like a blow to the face when we had reached that in March. So anyway, make sure you know that. And as far as goals, because a few of you have asked about communication with your therapist. It's very important that your plan of care is tailored to your child. It's very easy for us to go in there and click goals that are standard, and that's not the case for Syngapians. Make sure that they're unique, realistic, and tailored to your family, and not just your child, but your family too. And that you're just on the same page and aligned as a team, because that's what we want as therapists, especially for me. I want to be on the same page as the family. If you've got a crazy goal, like one of our goals for Miller is he needs to be able to put his socks and shoes on and off. He needs to be able to help mama in the mornings. And so that's really important. Um, yeah, good. Sorry, it's a lot. I told y'all I could talk about this forever. So y'all come find me if you have any questions.
I know we can all listen to Julie talk, and she's so knowledgeable, but we need to get everything moving so we make lunch on time. Next, we have Kevin Frye, who's going to be talking about advocacy and IEPs.
This is okay, I'm on. I'm Kevin Frye. How are you guys? I want to have some participation. So if your kid is in high school, louder, less loud. Okay, I figured they would handle that, but maybe nobody's standing back there. If your kid's in high school, raise your hand, raise your hand. Okay, middle school, raise your hand, a couple, all right. Elementary school, ooh, that's a lot of us. Okay, no school yet, no school yet. Okay, good, a lot of those too. You know, in the school context, in the United States, we are entitled, our kids, to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Okay, those are some legal words that come right out of the statute. But really, what does that mean? What that means, as everybody has said, is that we all have, our kids are all different, right? This is my third conference. I've enjoyed coming. I really appreciate all the work that these scientists are doing for us, and the work SRF is doing to move us forward. But I've always wondered, you know, what can I do in the meantime, right? Until there's a therapy, what can I do? And I think the answer is school and education, and having our kids be in the world, right? So when Nathan was going into pre-K, we had 7 IEP meetings before I agreed for them to come, for him to go there, the public school. In the first meeting, you know, the tone was, whoa, Nathan's got a disability. He had his Syngap diagnosis. He also had an autism diagnosis. And, you know, we have a self-contained classroom, and that's where he goes. That was not acceptable to me. And it was not acceptable for a lot of reasons, but luckily, and this is for you guys that aren't to school yet, luckily, we had unintentionally created a paper trail and evidence to show that Nathan could be successful in a regular school environment. He had started Montessori at 18 months because his brother, who's 16 months older, had already been there. Then we moved him. We live where the University of Mississippi is, and they have an on-campus preschool. It's the best preschool in our little town. Sucks for special ed kids, okay? But we went there on the assurance that they were going to do some things to help Nathan, and they tried to kick him out the third day, okay? The university, right? The School of Education runs this preschool, and so it was a year-long battle between me and the university, and what ended up happening was that they provided a grad student aide for part of his day in the preschool, and then we paid an undergrad special ed student to help in the afternoon. And so we had a year-long trail showing that he could be in a regular classroom when supported by an aide. And after 7 IEP meetings and lawyers all around, that's what he's had since he started school. So he's now in first grade. He did a year of pre-K on the university campus. Then he repeated a year of pre-K, and he's been with his classmates, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade. He's in a regular class. The aide supports him. They pull him out for therapies. And for a little bit of time during the day, he gets some special education. But for me, where do we go? Okay, besides this conference, maybe, where do we go where, as a family, where our kids are surrounded or only with special education or other people with disabilities, right? The answer is nowhere. Nowhere in our town do we go that everybody's got a disability. If you put this is what I say to the schools. You put all the kids that can't talk in a room together, what do you think is going to happen? Okay. And it's not just what I'm saying. If you guys are interested in this, we're a research motivated group. Go to the U.S. Department of Education website, at least until it gets shut down, I guess. That's a joke. Come on, politics. Type inclusion, and what you will find, the research going back to the 70s and 80s basically shows the most severe kids do the best in an inclusive environment. And so if you think about it, is what I just said. If you put all the kids that can't talk in a room, what do you think is going to happen? Well, if you put those same kids in a classroom with other little kids, especially in pre-K and kindergarten and first grade, when it's not desk work, it's social. And that's what they learn. Nathan's language has come so far. His skill set out in the public is good. We don't see a lot of behaviors, and I'm convinced a lot of that is because he's learned, just like every kid has to learn, the neurotypical kids have to learn how to behave in society, right? So I would just encourage you guys to think about that. That's kind of my soapbox, but the research is there, and it's not just me saying that. But I've also, our kids are different, and there's one other family in Mississippi. Wesley is the boy's name. He was in fourth grade. They called me in February. He's being raised by his grandparents. He's our other Syngap family. And the school that he was going to had determined, based on his behaviors, he had a lot of self-injury, head banging, throwing stuff, punching, just real severe. But they had decided that because of that, he was going to go home at noon every day. Among other things that were going on, that was the major problem. A big problem because grandma had to quit her job so that she could take care of him in the afternoons, right? Well, that's not acceptable and it's not legal. And so I got involved, and within a week, he was back in school full time. But one thing that I want to talk about in that context is, we can always do something to improve what's going on for our kids. And, the schools, the teachers at least, I think always are trying hard to do their best. I've got a good impression of teachers. I'm not sure the administration and the head of the schools really give special ed as much attention as they should. I think they don't. But we are sitting in an IEP meeting. Yeah, that's right. Clap for that. We're sitting in an IEP meeting. We're talking about what goes on with Wesley, and one of his goals was about transition, about moving throughout the building in his IEP. Well, as we're discussing this, what is clear, he rides the bus to school. When he gets off the bus, they put him in a transport chair. They strap him in. They wheel him to his classroom. When he moves throughout the building, they wheel him to those things. They were having lunch in the classroom. Basically, these kids were completely excluded. Not just Wesley. There were a couple other kids in the classroom too. And as we continue to talk about it, I'm like, well, what about on the playground? And there's 20 of us. It's me, it's all his teachers, it's lawyers for the school district. The superintendent was there. He hadn't been to an IEP meeting in 20 years, I think, but I was the first lawyer to show up. So he was there. So the playground, well, what the teacher said, oh, he doesn't really like the playground. And I'm like, what? What is that about? He doesn't like to play? Oh, wow. No, we just push him around in his transport chair. My 8-minute timer's going off. It's a short story. We push him around his chair, and that's what he likes the most. And I said, really? He doesn't want to swing or and then the teacher, she didn't know that well, and there's not a fence and the buses come right there, and so we're worried. Well, nobody said this, but what was clear is the reason they weren't letting him play on the playground was because they were afraid he was going to run off. And he has difficult behaviors, and he's a 10-year-old. He's big, right? 2 weeks later, there was a fence around that playground because I called the superintendent. I said, you got to put a dang fence. There are always things we can do to improve what's going on in the school. You just have to get involved. You have to pay attention, and you have to be there. I wish it didn't take calling a lawyer, but sometimes it does. And so I guess what I want to say to you guys is I'm a resource. I'm happy to help. What I found was there are no lawyers in Mississippi doing this work. I've been a lawyer for 20 years. I didn't know anything about special ed law, but I do now. And somehow I've found myself the chair of Mississippi's Special Ed Advisory Panel, and I'm quite involved now. And I want to do that for all of us just so that I can learn. But call me anytime you have a question. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate that time on IEPs. It's such an important subject and something that we can go on for, I'm sure, days. But next, we're going to have Elemy Yeme coming from EY Behavioral Services. She is our Syngap ABA guru. So I'll leave the stage for Elemy.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for everybody putting this event together. It's always a pleasure to be here. And since I know we're very crunched for time, we're going to just dive right into it. Today, I'd like to ask you, what if I told you that there is a way to achieve 2 times faster progress in ABA therapy for your family? Or if there was a way to achieve behavior change twice as fast for your child and your family? Would you be interested in that? Thumbs up? Yeah? Awesome. Well, I really wish that there was a list of strategies that I could give you that would fix all of your behavior problems. Unfortunately, that list doesn't exist. So today, what I really want to talk to you about is what actually behavior therapy that is life-changing looks like, and most importantly, the key shifts that you as a parent or caregiver can make to achieve those behavior changes for your child and your family a lot faster. One thing that I do want to point out before I dive deeper into it is that what we do at EY is not what most traditional ABA providers are doing. Of course, we follow the general guidelines and principles, but our general approach to treatment is very different. And that is because I believe that the complexity of certain behaviors and disorders like Syngap require more. And that is what I want to talk to you about. What I'm going to share with you today is based on the data that we have collected internally at EY from all of the families that have been able to achieve behavior progress a lot faster from their families and what we have found to be successful. I'm going to stay away from telling you about the one ABA strategy that is going to change your life or the step-by-step guide that is going to get all of your providers on the same page, because what I really want to talk to you about today is more powerful and foundational to achieving those successes that you're looking for in behavior terms. So what I'll walk you through today is the one thing that has been consistent across all of our families who have achieved incredible success. These are families that are navigating challenges like Syngap, Angelman syndrome, Cornelia de Lange, deaf, blind, complete different clinical profiles. But the one thing that they do have in common is that they embrace this becoming of what I'm going to call for today's purpose, an impact maker. So an impact maker are the families at EY who have transformed their child's behaviors and really achieved remarkable progress in their families' lives. So the first thing to know about becoming an impact maker and effective treatment is that you as a parent or caregiver are the most powerful source of change for your child and your family. The success of your treatment outcomes, the goals that you want to achieve, the hopes and dreams that you have for your child, they don't depend on your providers, they actually depend on you. And I'm going to tell you why. We only have a limited amount of time with your child. So to really make a difference in your life, it's about you learning the skills necessary to support your child's behaviors effectively. Without you being completely committed and actively involved, two things will happen. The first one is that your child will make progress, but without your consistent support from a behavioral standpoint as a parent in the home environment, your child will likely plateau and not be able to reach their full potential. And the second thing that will happen is that you will be placing blind trust on your providers. The truth is that you know your child best. So really only with your collaboration and your insight are we able to facilitate the most success. And I'll tell you a story. I had a Syngap client who, at the beginning, when I first started working with the family, the parents didn't think that they would be able to take the kid on an outing independently without facing some type of major behavior challenge, whether that was an aggressive episode in the middle of a car ride, making us pull over, or being able to get in and out of the car, in and out of places. With work and some therapy, we were able to make those outings more common and more frequent, and we were able to access more environments, which was awesome, but only with myself as a provider. So really the difference was made when the parents learned the skills to support their child in that environment. After some time, the parents were able to take him everywhere. We literally called this kid at some point the mayor of San Diego because he goes everywhere. And this goes to show that it's so important for you to learn the skills necessary to support your child's behaviors in those environments. So, and I want to clarify one point here. I know that everybody in this room is incredibly committed to your child's success. Syngap parents are some of the most relentless and caring people I have ever met. My message to you today is not to ask you to be more involved and committed. I know you already are. But one of the biggest challenges or mistakes that I see parents make when approaching treatment is that they place a lot of trust or they rely too heavily on their providers to be the solution to their behavior problems. So impact makers know that they need to be and become the long-term behavior solution for your child and your family. It's the only way that you're going to achieve lasting change. So learning the skills necessary for you to become that long-term behavior solution for you and your family starts with this. Realizing that the disorder is not the sole cause of your behaviors. There is a lot more layers to peel into that onion. It's also realizing that you need to change your behavior first in order for your child to change theirs. It's a little bit of the philosophy of like, you can't expect different results if you're continuing to do the same thing. So we need to change our approach first before we can expect those changes from them. Is being open and willing to change your beliefs about what your child is capable of and taking ownership of that progress. And then lastly, it's about realizing that understanding requires curiosity and that requires a little bit of effort, whether that is taking information outside of session, collecting data, practicing those skills on your own, or spending more time observing and learning about your child. So if this resonated with you, the one thing that I would recommend you start with is asking yourself this question: how close are you from feeling completely confident in your ability to manage challenging behaviors? If you're not close, there might be a gap that we need to bridge in your skill set. The second thing to know about effective treatment and becoming an impact maker is that no one thing alone will solve your behavior challenge. Parents often I see make the mistake of looking for like the one magic pill or the one quick fix. Give me the ABA strategy that is going to change this behavior. But the truth is that effective treatment requires a combination of multiple approaches. In order for any behavior to change, for behavior change to happen at all, three things must happen. The first one is that we must understand the reason for the behavior. Why does this behavior happen in the first place? What is this behavior trying to achieve? What is the outcome the child wants out of this behavior? The second thing that needs to happen is we need to teach an alternative behavior, a new behavior that gives the child the exact same thing than the old one does. So for example, if a child tantrums to get what they want, teaching them to point to tell you what you want is an alternative behavior that we can teach. The third thing for behavior change that must happen is that this alternative behavior needs to be easier for the child. So for example, in the tantruming pointing example, if we teach pointing and pointing is easier for the child to get what they want than tantruming, then pointing will stay. But if tantruming is easier to get what they want, then tantruming will continue. Also, for behavior intervention to be effective, is super important for the child to be in the right state of mind, calm, focused, and ready to learn. So tools and interventions like medication, what they do is that they regulate the nervous system of the child, and they give us a window where we can teach and where they can learn. But they don't teach alternative behaviors. This is why medication alone is not an effective solution for your child's behavior problems. It's so important to know that behavior intervention requires to be holistic and comprehensive. We're not about fixing behaviors, eliminating behaviors. It's about understanding, teaching, and really meeting the child's needs in order for that behavior change to occur. So if any of this resonated with you, I would ask yourself, I would start with asking myself this question. Is there anything that you think is going to be the magic pill to solving your child's behavior challenges? And if so, will this help you understand why the behavior happens in the first place? Will it help you teach your child an alternative behavior, or will it make it easier for your child? If the answer to any of those questions is no, then that may mean that we don't have as comprehensive of a treatment as we may want it to be, and there is something to look at there. The third thing to know, about effective treatment and becoming an impact maker is that it is crucial to understand the subtle changes in your child's behaviors. This is piggybacking on what Monica said on really knowing your child and knowing your baseline. We really want to know the subtle changes in behavior. This is so important to know your child in great detail and to know who they are at their best. Impact makers do understand this one thing, which is the key to predicting and managing behaviors lies in your ability to identify those subtle changes in behaviors. This involves picking up on subtle cues like the ones I have up here. We are looking at changes in breathing patterns, eye movement, mood changes, energy, skin tone. So for example, we may look at a child's pupils and see if they're constricted or dilated. We may look at if the child is blinking faster or slower than usual. Are their movements faster or slower than usual? And these cues, what they allow us to, or what the information that they give us is that they give us insights into their physical and emotional state. And they allow us to identify patterns, predict behaviors, and change our approach based on what we are observing. If you know what your child typically looks like at their best, then you're able to predict when they're about to turn into their worst. And you're able to change that approach based on what you're seeing. So for example, if you identify that your child is having a little bit of an off day, you can decrease demands, engage in self-regulation, change the environment. Or if you're seeing that they're having a great day, then you can potentially push them a little bit more and push them outside of their comfort zone to achieve progress in the right direction. Knowing your child in like a deeply nuanced level, like knowing when they blink the wrong direction and you're like, a behavior is going to happen, is really effective for your day-to-day interactions and also for helping understand or know if other treatments and interventions like medication are effective. If you're able to see what your child looks like at their best and out of a sudden it's not going that way, then you're able to say, oh, let's look at what other interventions, what other medication we integrated, we changed that is not working for my child. So if this resonated with you, I would start with looking at this list and asking yourself, is there anything in this list that I do not know about my child when they are at their best? If there is something that you can identify, again, even the rate or blinking, how many times do they blink? How fast do they respond? If there's anything that you don't know on that list about how your child behaves at their best, then that's a good place to start in starting to observe your child in those moments. And then one thing, super side note for those of you who do have ABA and are interested in this strategy of getting to really know the nuanced behaviors. This requires quite a bit of support from your team for data collection and systematic intervention. So this is why at EY, we don't have behavior technicians working with Syngap patients. That's again, because I believe that the complexity of the disorder requires that level of competency. So at EY, we only have higher level clinicians working with Syngap patients. If you take this information back to your team, just know that there might be some differences in the kind of support that you will get. So I think I did pretty good in time. These are the 3 things that I'll just share one last thing. My story, of course. These are the 3 things that really we have seen to be the most successful with the families that have achieved the most success. And I just want to remind you, like, you know your child best. Everything that the panel before me said about therapies, making sure that is for your child, that the behavior therapists that are there are in alignment with your family, I so stand by, is all true. So you know your child best, you know your family best, know that you can achieve this incredible success like the one that we have achieved at EY with some of our incredible families. And I really hope that from today, you gain a little bit of clarity on what things you can do right now to make faster progress in the direction of your child's behaviors. And then if you are ready for more and you would like to have more resources, we do have a free newsletter that you can subscribe to where we share weekly practical strategies on some of the most common behavior challenges that our families experience. And if you have problems with dropping behavior, I have a webinar coming up on Friday as well. That's it.
Thanks, Elemy. Does anybody have any questions for Elemy while you have her here in person?
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm a Syngap mom. I have a question about preferred caregiver. I know that in my family, and I've heard it from other families as well, that the child often has like a very preferred caregiver. Are there any recommendations on how to help the other parent navigate helping when the child's like resistant to only working with one parent?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So the place that I would start is my point number 3, really understanding those subtle changes in behavior. So I would look at what that preferred caregiver does that is different from every other caregiver and try to bridge that gap in behavior from the caregiver. It is likely that that preferred caregiver outside of the relationship that has already been built, which is history, that preferred caregiver is doing something that is really comforting to that child. So we want to bridge that gap. It doesn't mean that it needs to be quick. It's just let's pay attention and then let's slowly bring the non-preferred adult in so that the child starts accepting them. Mhm.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I saw you looking over there. Maybe anyway, we just started. Hi, I'm Zoe, and we just started ABA therapy with our daughter, 4.5-year-old daughter. And I'm just wondering the level of engagement you would be ideal, but for us to be communicating with the ABA provider on goals, or like what are they supposed to be sharing, or not what are they supposed to be? What would be ideal in terms of them sharing with us progress? Because at this point, it seems to be like a highlight of our daughter's day when she comes, which is really important. But I don't know.
I don't know how, I'm not really getting a lot in terms of like what they're working on, what the progress are. I've heard other moms are like have this little app and they know every little thing, but that seems a little extra. So I don't know what, just your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you in my experience, what I have seen to be successful for families and what we do in our practice. Definitely for treatment planning, for anything that we tell our families exactly what we're working on when we are there in the session. When it comes to treatment planning, it's about collaboration with the families. In my experience and my perspective, I don't want to come as a provider and tell you what we're going to do with your family and your child. I will want that collaboration from you to see what's meaningful for you and what you want to work on. So that level of involvement where you are aware of what you're working on, where you're headed, what are your goals, is probably a good foundation and where I would start. You want to know where we're working on.
Thank you. I get to be the bad guy.